Okay, great. So welcome everybody. This is our next meeting of the OER Technology Working Group led by MEC and in collaboration with our other partners at the regional compacts across the country, WICHE, SREB, NEBI. We have been fortunate to receive funding from the Hewlett Foundation to create what we're calling the National Consortium for OER and COER. And as part of that work through the grant, we've formed different working groups and different projects across the 4 compacts. One of MEC's projects is to look a little more deeply at the ways OER and different technologies intersect and the different kinds of technologies that are available to support the use of OER in the region and across the country. And to that end, our working group met early in January and talked about some of the challenges that they face in sort of assessing the different products that are on the market to support OER work, and just knowing what's out there and how to use it and what's good and what's not good and where it's confusing. And from those conversations, we have decided to invite a number of partners from across the country that are working on different products to support OER use. And that brings us to today. So at our meeting in June, we heard from Pressbooks and LibreText, and today we'll be hearing from some of our colleagues in New York out of the CUNY system who have developed some products. The first is we're going to hear from is CBOX OpenLab, and then later today we'll be hearing about Manifold. So that's our agenda for today. We will have some time in between the 2 presentations to talk, and there'll be time at the end of each presentation for you to ask questions of the group. And at this point, I'm going to turn over to Charlie Edwards, who's the co-director of OpenLab, and she can introduce her teammates and get started.
That's great. Does Chris have presenter? Chris is going to do the presenting for us. If you can share, that would be all right. I'm Charlie Edwards. I'm the co-project director of CBOX OpenLab with Matt Gold, who you'll be meeting this afternoon. And also one of the co-directors of the OpenLab at City Tech, which is the original. And I'm here with Jody Rosen, also a co-director of the OpenLab at City Tech and a co-director of CBOX OpenLab. And also Chris Stein, who is, here we go, there we go, there's our titles up here, yes. So Chris Stein is Chair of Media Arts and Technology at BMCC and a co-director of CBOX OpenLab and the BMCC OpenLab. And Jean Amaral, who is Associate Professor Open Knowledge Librarian at BMCC and also another co-director of the BMCC OpenLab. So thank you so much for the invitation today. And we are going to be telling you about Commons in a Box OpenLab, which is an open platform for open pedagogy and OER. And we're going to run through some things pretty quickly, but we will share the slides with you afterwards. And if you'd like to hold your questions to the end, we'll have time for questions. So this slide up here is just to show you that we are a few of the many people who are involved in the work that we're sharing today, including the members of the platforms that will be showing you their work. So Chris, next slide. So CBOX OpenLab, and next slide, please. Came from the OpenLab at City Tech, and City Tech is a minority serving institution in downtown Brooklyn that's part of the CUNY system. And in 2011, with funding from a Title V grant, we built the OpenLab, which is our open platform for teaching, learning and collaboration. It's built using open source software, WordPress and BuddyPress, and everyone at the college can use it, students, faculty and staff. And since its launch, it's served more than 36,000 members. Hundreds of courses use the OpenLab each semester, along with student clubs, portfolios, projects of all kinds, and of course OER. Next slide, please, Chris. So people kept asking us how they could launch an OpenLab of their own. And so a couple of years ago, with funding from the NEH, we collaborated with the Commons in a Box team at CUNY Graduate Center, led by Matt Gold. And together we built a new version of Commons in a Box, specifically designed for teaching and learning, that's modeled on the OpenLab. And basically what that did was abstract the features and functionality of the OpenLab, package it up, put it into a box, and now when you can install it and create an OpenLab of your own. Next slide, please. So now anyone can create a Commons for Open Learning, and it's being adopted at CUNY and beyond, including by BMCC. Next slide, please. So what's in a name? To unpack its name, unlike closed online teaching systems, the OpenLab allows everyone at the college to share their work with one another in the world. And like a lab, it provides a space where everyone can come together and work in innovative ways. Next slide, please. So what does that mean for OER? It means that you have OER that are embedded in an open educational community, OER that are created by, for, and within an open community, using open infrastructure that's designed to foster a culture of openness and sharing. And so now we'll show a little bit more about what that looks like in action. So take it away.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Charlie. So in my role, I actually co-lead our open educational resources and open pedagogy programs. And we were super excited to have OpenLab come to our campus, because it meant a lot of our work could now be presented on the OpenLab on the web for people around the world, for instructors around the world to see. So in terms of using this platform for open educational resources, here's one example from one of our instructors, as you can see, an American government course. And this is very similar to a commercial textbook platform where you go in, students go into that platform, and then they work through modules, and all of the material is presented all together. So they have videos, they have text, they might have quizzes. And as you can see here, this is one of those modules. And you can see the first item within it is to watch a video. So a wonderful way to openly share information with the students, again, similar to one of those commercial platforms. And what's really exciting about this is that faculty can choose whatever organizational structure they want, and not be tied in or locked in or boxed in by what the commercial publisher is doing. So rather than the publisher dictating the sequence and the activities, the instructor has freedom to design the learning experience the way they would like, with OER and other no-cost materials, and they can mash up. So they can adopt OER and put it on that page, they can adapt OER and put it on that page, or they can create their own work. And this is an example of a faculty member who created their own work. So this is a course site for this course, but this is their textbook. The textbook is embedded right into the course site, and you can see underneath that menu drop down, those are the chapters of the textbook. And because it is online like this, again, similar to commercial platforms, you can embed multimedia. So you've got the text, you've got videos that can be watched, and obviously you can embed audio and all sorts of things. So again, so much freedom for the faculty to design their space for their students with OER and other no-cost materials organized in the way they want. And again, mashing up all sorts of things, adapting, adopting, creating, and delivering it right here on the OpenLab in this space. Jody.
Thanks, Jean. So one thing that I think is really exciting to talk about is how faculty get support for doing all the great things like Jean was just talking about. At City Tech and also at BMCC, there are OER fellowships, seminar style, bringing together of faculty to learn about using open educational resources, about building them, about how to present them on the OpenLab. And all of that happens in the same platform where they're actually going to be presenting and sharing those OER. So it's a really great way for shared practices. It's a really great way to model best practices, right? So our OER librarians can build modules that use the best practices that they're then asking faculty to adopt into their OER. And it's a great way to create community, both among the cohort of fellowship participants, but then also among the participants in their departments, right? So as other faculty members are adopting those OERs. I'm going to pass it on back to Jean.
Excellent, thanks so much. So those were examples of delivering OER materials on this platform. And part of delivering those materials is actually teaching in the open. This is what this platform allows faculty. So rather than having an OER course and having them be the only ones who see that, this is a way to share and openly teach those OER courses. So it's this building of moving from OER to teaching in the open and to including open pedagogy. So here's a course, and again, you can see this instructor has designed it the way they teach. You can see their week 1, week 2. So instead of modules, they've got their weeks there. This is all with no cost materials, OER and other no cost materials. And they're teaching in the open, and the students are performing knowledge in the open. So as the students learn, as they do their assignments, no longer is it a disposable assignment, no longer is it an inauthentic where there's only one audience member. Now the student is sharing with the world, their learning process, their creation of knowledge. And within this platform, there are also an option for portfolios. So not only can they do this performance, the students can perform this work on the course site, but then they can choose, as you can see, the red arrow, they can choose to add the work to their portfolio as well. So there's a great integration between this open work that we're doing and the students and how they can actually highlight and share that work with others as well. It's not just the course site, it's their portfolio, which they can share with employers and others too. And it's all an ecosystem, right? So to think about that ecosystem, oftentimes we're just thinking about one part of it. And this platform, this open platform, provides the opportunity to really go bigger and wider and think about the ecosystem. Jody.
Thanks. So building off all of the excitement that Jean was just talking about with open pedagogy, I want to show an example from CityTech's OpenLab that uses a feature called shared cloning. So I don't know if you can, how large your screen is, if you can see up in the top left corner on that course avatar, we see open and clonable. So this is an example of a course that a course coordinator built and decided that they'd make it shareable, clonable, so anybody else teaching this course could clone this and then make it their own. It's really a great way both to create greater consistency across sections that are coordinated by a course coordinator, but then also to kind of use that as a starting point and allow for greater flexibility and customization as faculty teach the course. It's also really important, particularly when adjuncts are teaching the course and aren't necessarily paid for outside of the semester planning. This could be a great way to start off with a full course ready to go that just requires some customization and really leverages the openness of the materials and that shareability, the remix of Creative Commons licensed materials. So I'm going to switch over to talk about another initiative that really works hand in hand with the OER initiative on our campus, and that's model courses and course hubs. We took advantage of the initiatives that were happening where course coordinators were building courses and then allowing them to be cloned, to ask faculty members to build with that purpose in mind, to create a model that could be cloned by anybody else teaching that course. This would, ask departments to get behind it and say, this is the curriculum that we are fully endorsing, and this is a good way for anybody teaching this course. It's really helpful, especially with enrollment changes during the pandemic, and maybe your course didn't run and you're picking up another section. You're running right from the start with a fully viable course that has everything you need built into it. These have all open readings built into them. So no need to buy a textbook, no need to first scramble to find readings that come together. This is pictured here an example of a course that is using some core text. So really trying to give students the experience of shared reading experiences across different sections. And then built into that is attribution. So you can see when anybody else clones that, you can see a list of everybody who's cloning it and working with that. Thanks, Chris, for going back. A course hub is another way of sharing that material. It's not just for one section of a course. It's for anyone, you know, for example, anyone taking calculus that semester, they can use that. But it, like an OER, as an OER, it's shareable beyond that semester. So this isn't just for students taking Math 1575. It's for students in 1475 wondering, what am I going to do next semester in 1575? Or who are taking engineering and physics and want to refresh their memory about what did they learn in calculus. So it's a really great resource to kind of look backward and forward at the same time. It's another really good way of creating kind of a starting place where then faculty can innovate and remix and ask for really creative things of their students. So one colleague took two of her classes, not the same section, not the same courses, and asked them to collaborate. So that 1575 that was using that hub, they're also collaborating with a class on differential equations and bringing their different knowledge together to create a really valuable lived experience of working with math for others to come and share from that.
I love that example, Jody. We actually have at BMCC an international program where we actually use the OpenLab to have students in another country collaborate with our students on our campus, and that may be happening at City Tech as well. So just to reinforce some of the things that Jody said about course hubs and templates, BMCC has a very similar program with both of these. For our course templates, we're actually envisioning them so similar to a model course, where we create a course template for OER courses where any faculty member can clone that and run with it. So they don't have to add anything, they don't have to take anything out. They can, but they can run with it. And this is in particular for adjuncts who are assigned the course the week before the course starts and are usually handed a syllabus that has a commercial textbook listed and say, go teach your course. So this allows our course coordinators to say to the adjunct, here's a course on OpenLab, everything is there for you. You can run with it and teach at OER. So there's no barrier to stepping into using OER in a course. And our course hubs are also very similar. This is where faculty might want choice. So maybe they don't want the course template because for them, they want to just see what's available and pick and choose. So they already have a course that they've been teaching. The course hub provides lots of options. You can see on this one, the different kinds, like there's assignments, there's readings, there's videos, all of that. And so a faculty member can go in and say, I want to just start with one module, or I want to redo my whole course, but I'm going to choose from the many options that are presented on this hub. And so this is a way for us to incentivize and recruit faculty into OER programs because it lowers the barrier and they can see it. They can see it right there and they get excited about it. Like, oh yeah, and there's a community building with the faculty member around these course hubs in these model templates. So it creates community, incentivizes, and gets faculty excited about moving to OER.
Hey, Jean, you do have a question in the chat. I don't know if you want to take questions now or wait a little bit till you get through your.
We thought if we take them at the end, we've noted it. It's a great one, but maybe in the we'll just speed on through and then we'll come to questions. Thank you.
Perfect.
Right, and so I guess I'll go relatively quickly through this. Just a couple things on getting started with Commons in a Box OpenLab. There's a website we have for at cbox.org, also commonsinAbox.org, that lets you see that. There's both what's called CBOX Classic, which is an earlier version based on the Commons that we said before, and then the CBOX OpenLab or Commons in a Box OpenLab that we're showing you today. And the site allows you to tour it, to sort of get a sense for it, also look at the features of it. There's an FAQs, which is especially helpful for people who are just getting started, in terms of installing this, which, I should mention, it is essentially, you need to have a WordPress multi-site installed. So for those of you who might have had a technical questions and things on that, but this site has a lot more, and the people who are on it are there too. So like this support is monitored by the people you see here today, but also by the developers who are on it as well, and other people who are using it. So it really gives you a chance to ask questions and get answers from people who are active on the project and using it as well. And then also just to mention, Reclaim Hosting, they have a lot of customized hosting options for CBOX OL that can help you get started from a very basic one to a really customized one. And they're also used to working with our timelines and eccentricities of the payments that come with being an educational institution. And sort of full disclosure, that's the one that at BMCC we're using to host our OpenLab as well. So I will pass it on to
Great.
Charlie.
Thank you. You can hear me, right? Yes. So one of the most exciting things about getting involved in this kind of project is its collaborative nature. So Chris, next slide, thank you. So a lot of the features that we've shown you have come out of a very deep collaboration between us and the library at City Tech, which is funded, this development work is funded by the CUNY OER initiative. So I wanted just to highlight a couple of features that relate to attribution. So that actually relates to the question that came in the chat. So, you know, a correlative to sharing is attribution. So we find that people are happy to give their work away and they get credit for it. And so a lot of that is work that we're doing now. So for instance, again, it's kind of small, but I think you can see this is a course that was cloned, and this gives attribution acknowledgement to the people who created the course that it was cloned from. So you can see there's a little chain that goes back here of credit. And then another thing that we're doing, this is a plugin that we're going to be releasing very shortly, is as a WordPress plugin, is about attribution. So kind of tools for doing attribution. Yeah, next slide, please, Chris. And so coming soon, we've also got a plugin that we're working on for exporting and importing. So that will make it easier to share, not just within an institution, but also across institutional boundaries. So the OER that are created on the OpenLab at City Tech, we can share with people at BMCC, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's going to be released too. And also we're going to be launching very soon a community hub. So that's for people who are interested in using CBOX OpenLab or are using it, to come together and collaborate on projects and share ideas and ask technical questions. But it's going to be a lot about praxis as well, about how do you want to use this platform. And then I think we can go into questions.
Awesome. I'm happy to dive in on the first one and then pass it over. There's some wonderful questions coming in the chat. So thank you for that. I'm loving all of these. It's really exciting. And Stephanie, shout out. Glad to see you in the house. Wonderful to have you here. And a CUNY colleague who left us for more wide open spaces. And so in terms of getting around the objections about intellectual property or academic freedom, the folks that are creating these templates and these hubs are faculty who have gone through our OER seminar and our Open Pedagogy seminar. These are 2-day-long seminars. And so they believe in open. So it's not going to be the person who's questioning, why am I going to give away my stuff? I'm not going to give away my stuff. That's not the faculty that get involved in creating these templates and hubs. It's the folks who already believe in this. They're committed to it. They know this is better for our students, and they are committed to doing this for our students. And also, our faculty who go through this, they actually see more academic freedom working with open materials than they do with publishers. Oftentimes they get to the other side of this and they're like, oh my God, I was so restricted by the publishing content, the publisher's content. I have so much more academic freedom when I'm working with open materials. So that becomes really clear to them very quickly. I will say that to get a little bit at what you're saying there with full-time faculty, maybe this works for adjuncts or not. When people adopt a template or a model course, we don't think they're going to stick with it. We think they're going to teach with it for one semester as they get used to the course. Maybe it's the first time they taught it, or maybe they're an adjunct coming in and it's the first time they're teaching it at our institution. And we expect they'll change it, and they can because it's open. So they get to make it their own in future semesters as they continue teaching.
And also, just based on the topic for today, we weren't really showing you people who kind of do their own thing and it's a standalone and not part of the model course initiative or an OER, et cetera.
The platform supports OER, but it doesn't mandate it, right? You can make things here that are hidden to everybody. There's a lot of levels of privacy control. So someone could make something that is not open and closed, you know, if that's what they wanted to. So it allows that flexibility. And that's one of the also things I think is very different from this and LMSs. Most LMSs are very closed, right? If you want to do anything on it and change it, you have very limited ability to do that. And you know, this is more open in many ways than a standard LMS is done. And it's not, Also, LMSs are based, from my experience of them, and I haven't used all of them, so I'm not sure which one you all are using. And we have Blackboard at CUNY, by the way, to answer another question, is that they're very course focused, right? You know, our LMS, it's all about what courses you're in, and then when that semester is over, you got a little bit of time, and then it's gone, and then it's on. Whereas this is more than just courses; it's also about community and other things, and we let them live, right? There are projects on the City Tech's OpenLab that have been there since the beginning and are still there and will continue to be. So it's also a different way of interacting with the material as well.
And then if I could just take up the next question, Rachel's question, although there isn't a mechanism to automate integrating it into Blackboard or Canvas, the materials that are openly available for anyone to copy and port wherever they want it to go. And I could just speak from experience with the first year writing model courses that a lot of folks were bringing the content over into Blackboard, and some who were able to do that, who were a little bit better with the system, were able to copy the shell, I think is the lingo, to then share that with other faculty members. So the spirit of sharing is certainly available, even if you're in a more closed system. And we see the OpenLab as a platform for the OER, to have the OER in the open, as opposed to putting it on Blackboard where it's closed. So even if someone is teaching on another platform, they can still bring it there.
We've kind of touched on quite a few of the questions here in the chat, I think. In general, talked a little bit about differences with LMSs. I think, you know, we don't see ourselves, as Chris was saying, we don't see ourselves as an LMS. If you were to do a one-for-one comparison functionality, etc., you know, then they're not the same, but they have different goals. You know, this is much more about building community and openness and sharing.
Yeah, and just quickly, before I hand it off for somebody to talk about the offline question there, is there confusion between the platforms? We work with our faculty to point back and forth. So we have faculty who have courses in OpenLab, but they use the gradebook or assignments back in Blackboard. So there's a Blackboard link on their OpenLab site that says, go here for your grades or your assignments, right? And then in the Blackboard site, there's an announcement or a page that says, hey, all the materials out on the OpenLab, here's a link to get you over to that site. So we make sure it's seamless for students to be able to go back and forth and find where they're working. So it's a continuum. We have some folks who are doing absolutely everything on the OpenLab. And then we have some folks who are doing a mix, and then some folks who take that OpenLab material, bring it into Blackboard and work in Blackboard with it.
Right. Yeah. And to build on that a little bit and answer some of the other questions, this is getting towards the, can you do it offline? You know, right now there's nothing built in that would let you do it offline. I've thought about this actually, and there's ways, because now with some of the advancements with web workers and things like that, there are ways built into browsers and things where you can move content offline. And part of the nice thing about working in a platform like this is, because it's an open platform, if that's something that ends up becoming really important to someone or us, someone may develop that, you know, to a way to like say, okay, I want to save this, you know, material on this course offline so I could view it even if I don't have internet connection, which is also, I found, at least for us, getting changes in this compared to getting changes in vendor-based technology is very different, right? Like, we're actually right now working on, you know, like what Charlie said, she has things that they're working on. We have our own, some projects we're working on at BMCC, and, you know, it's constantly being able to look at it and change it and update it to what we want to be able to do.
And you could also use the print this page option if you want to have your content.
True, yeah, and yeah, exactly. And there is a
print to a PDF and
a PDF, right? Exactly, PDF options like that. That can work with, depending on your layout. It can be more or less successful, to, you know, with fully honesty, but it's an option to do if you want that. Yes.
So I wanted to quickly,
oh yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to quickly look at the difference between this and LMS, but also other OER platforms. And the main difference for me between OpenLab and the LMS is that OpenLab is individualized. An individual faculty sees only their stuff, an individual student sees only their stuff, versus the OpenLab, we're a community of learners. We can go into these courses that are open, or we can see that somebody's got a course, maybe it's not open, where we can ask, what are you doing in there? And so it's this amazing environment where, oh, we're a community of learners. Learning is relational, learning is social and emotional, and that's where we're seeing it in this space, in this platform. Everything is so closed and it's only about me and my work in that LMS. And here we're just all together, doing it together, learning from each other together. And I think what may be different, and other folks can dive in on this one, difference between this platform and other OER platforms is that oftentimes it's a text, you're working with a text and only a text. This is a bigger, there's more in this ecosystem than in those other platforms. And not to say they aren't great. So, you know, if you're using Pressbooks, you can still have an OpenLab course site where you bring in Pressbooks and use it with it. It's not like they can't be used together, but this is a larger ecosystem than a lot of the other OER platforms are.
Oh, that's a great question from Rachel. That's definitely something to think about. Yeah, that's true. So a question from...
I would just add that there are tools like Anthologize that allow you to package up the content on a website and make an EPUB or a PDF or that kind of thing from it. And that's a plugin that's available on the OpenLab. You know, you could just activate that plugin and decide how you want to essentially publish your course site into whatever format you choose. So I think that while it might not be the most intentional way of doing it, there are certainly ways to work around the restrictions that you have.
Yes.
I'm relying on you, Annika, to tell us when to stop talking.
This is great. There's lots of really great questions.
Yeah, and before Jody or Charlie takes up the gradebook question, I do want to say one thing about working in this way and working with our faculty on OER and open pedagogy. Many of them are moving to ungrading. And so we don't need the gradebook because they're heading in that direction. They've been introduced to OER and the open pedagogy, and one of the next steps to being student-centered, student-driven is to move to ungrading. And there's, if you don't know about ungrading, there's a book out by Susan Bloom, came out, I think, last fall. It's terrific, and that may be helpful if you're interested in exploring that.
Yeah, so one thing too, just in terms of what you're going to see, what you've seen with Pressbooks and LibreText and what you're going to see in Manifold, and I think this was mentioned a little bit before, but those are great platforms. They're focused on essentially publishing book-like structures, right? You know, linear, for the most part, linear content written with some pictures, whereas the OpenLab is a publishing platform where you're essentially allowing people to create their own websites and anything that can go in a website, right? So these are, it's a more open platform because you're thinking more web platform as opposed to more traditional publishing platform on it, if you're looking at those kind of differences. So it's focused less on the individual text that you're publishing and more on this open platform where you can publish a lot of different things. If you want to be at all video based, you know, you could do that. If you want interactive pieces in it, obviously some of these platforms allow for interactive, but you know, this has some different ways on that too. So that's another format. And then of course, there's also the focus on things that are non-class based or text based, like the community aspects and other things like that, that you can do. I mean, we didn't even talk about things like you can send people messages directly on the platform as well, and other things like that too. So there's calendars, you know, those kind of features and functionality. So it's a sort of a larger system and ecosystem, and also it can allow things like Pressbooks and LibreText to work within it because you can link out to those resources and incorporate them in as well.
Yeah, I think we would say that it's a hub for the community that plays nicely with a lot of other things, include, you know, whether it's Manifold, Pressbooks or whatever, in the sense that you can link and connect and connect into the hub and make things visible and available through the OpenLab. So people, there was things about, do people get confused between going backwards and forwards between Blackboard and the OpenLab? I think, you know, it's obviously, this is something that, you know, everybody has to deal with, is, you know, navigating these different spaces. But we found through, you know, the last decade of faculty using the OpenLab, that it's something that people manage to work with their students. So it has not ever proved to be an insuperable obstacle. Thank you, Jody. Yeah, people, we don't necessarily want to allow totally homogeneous spaces where everybody's in one space doing everything. So anyway, so that's let's see, there are things that we didn't talk about. Gradebook, yes. So Jody, do you want to speak about Gradebook?
Sure. So I would say at City Tech, we have two options. One is a gradebook that just allows faculty to communicate grades and add comments to it. It's a kind of no frills option that doesn't do the calculating for you, et cetera. And then something else that I think is maybe more interesting to use, and I think also goes along with the a little bit more maybe the spirit of ungrading, is an option to make private comments and add a grade, but the grade doesn't have to be a numeric grade. It's whatever format you want that to be in. But the private comment is a great way to convey feedback, and that would be, say, a student makes a post on a course site, and you can give your feedback that way. So two different options. If you do that, the one with the comment doesn't show, but the grade would show in the back end of the where they can look at all their posts, where the students can look at all their posts, they could see the grades that they got on them. So kind of two different approaches. And the second one is in CBOX OpenLab. I don't believe that the first one.
Yeah, no, we don't have Gradebook in yes, I realized, of course, after I punted that one to you, I should not have punted it to you, because we don't actually have Gradebook in the Gradebook functionality that we have on the OpenLab in CBOX OpenLab. I think we would want to develop something that's a wish list for something in the future. But the grade comments feature, we absolutely do have, and we do not have an LTI at the moment. To answer that question, no, we do not. But this export import tool is something that we are just working on. It's right now, literally, my colleague is testing it right now, and so that's the approach that we're taking for the moment around that. But and
the manual way of just telling, putting the grade on Blackboard and having students go there to check their grades. That's sort of the other way people manage that.
I think it also depends on the nature of the course, and a little bit of it is like selection bias of who's using the OpenLab and the kinds of things, what they value. Do they want to have a very quiz heavy course, or do they want to have more open-ended questions and whatnot? So I think to some extent it's kind of self-selecting, but there are certainly faculty. I mean, some of our largest adopters are in nursing and other fields that are very test-driven and whatnot. So people find their way of when they want to use, say, a test bank of questions in Blackboard versus free response discussions on the OpenLab. Yes.
Yes. That's exactly what it is. We actually present. It's funny because when you put something out into the world like this, you don't know who's going to use it. And I kind of stumbled across a session that some people up in Canada had done about Commons in a Box. We have to Commons in a Box OpenLab. We have to reach out to them, and one of them described it as an un-LMS, and I have to say we did feel quite honoured that he said something like, "This has everything that you need, but not all the stuff that you don't need." So
and if you do know, since it seems like you do know that, with that, you're exactly right. From a technical perspective, it is a plugin that you add to WordPress multi-site.
Yes. So it's a lot of heavy customization. The other thing that somebody said to us recently is that you can tell that this was designed by educators. So this is that's the mission, is truly free open source software put out there into the world, designed by educators and friendly technologists. So
yes, and also we should say too that the developers who we work with are really top level WordPress developers. A few of them are on core committers on WordPress, and obviously on this plugin as well, so that you're not. You're getting that really a lot of deep experience, both on the academic side and pedagogy side, but also on the technical side as well.
Jonathan, did you have a question as I come off mute or comment?
Me?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, so sorry. No, so this is really, thank you. It just, I find really LMS is very constricting, and it seems like you have kind of broken out of the box and you provide a ton of tools for sharing and community building. And I love the portfolio tool of it, including things. There's a whole lot of support. And, you know, I find myself thinking, you know, and you've mentioned several times, well, what you could do in a web page, you know, you can do it in this system. So I find myself thinking, well, why don't just like kind of a huge domain of one's own? So why don't just give people a lot of web space and say, go for it, you know? And the answer is, I think, obviously that educators don't want to know how to code in HTML and don't want to know how to integrate various tools. And then, you know, and there may be open source tools they want to put together. You've helped them put those tools together and provided a greenhouse where they can work with these well. So I think it's a really good idea. I mean, I always wish people would go right to the web, but I think this is actually much smarter than going to the web, because the web would just chase everyone away. So.
Yeah, this is really a lot about lowering barriers to entry, and the model course initiative that we showed you, that came up really in response to the pandemic, because everybody was kind of forced online in one way or another, and some people were really, really struggling. And so our provost came to us and said at City Tech, you know, what can you do to help? And so that was, you know, whereas previously we'd really kind of stood back and let people do whatever they wanted, and the template for the courses was very light. We realized people needed more in order to be able to get to the point of being able to collaborate with students enough to make it, you know, these things really viable courses. And so that's where the templates, I know that there were questions earlier from Stephanie was asking great questions about, like, you know, how people feeling agency, people feeling ownership, and those kinds of things. It was really more about, we're helping you, we're coming here, we're trying to kind of help you get up and running and provide you with materials to help you. You don't have to use them. And but they're here for you if you want and need them. And then also for the faculty, it was really a nice way of them getting credit for all the work that they've done, because we have this long-running OER initiative, but sometimes you know, people would feel even funny about adopting the materials because they would think that they belong to somebody else. But with the model course initiative, it was like very explicit. These are being designed for you. Please take them and use them. And therefore we got kind of, it seemed like a lot of adoption on these courses, because people just were like, oh, great, I can take this and nobody minds, you know. And people get credit for the creation. So I know I'm looking at the time here.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I would have to pull you off the stage now, but thank you. Thank you guys very much for your presentation. We are going to hear from your other colleagues, so I know you know very well. We're going to talk about Manifold. Yes. Of course, you're welcome to stay for that conversation, or you can happily sign off. But we thank you very much for giving this demo and showing us all your great work today.
We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks for having us.
And if you want to send over your slides to me, I can distribute them.
Yes, we will. And all good wishes to the Manifold people. I'm so sorry I have to run, but we obviously we think you're awesome. So okay. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.